A billionaire watched a stranger hug his grieving daughter in that quiet moment. Everything changed. The grand ballroom shimmered under 1,000 tiny lights. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen stars, and soft music floated through the air, mixing with the low hum of rich voices and clinking glasses. Men in sharp tuxedos and women in elegant gowns moved gracefully across the polished floor, laughing and chatting as if they owned the night itself. Cameras flashed near the entrance, capturing every famous face that walked in. This was no ordinary party, it was the annual Hope for Tomorrow Gala, one of the most exclusive charity events in New York City, where billionaires, celebrities, and powerful politicians gathered to show off their generosity and their wealth. In the middle of all this glitter and noise stood Daniel Reeves. He looked every bit the successful man the world believed him to be. Tall, well-dressed, calm. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his silver hair neatly combed, and his expression unreadable. But beneath that polished surface, his heart was heavy. This was his first public appearance since his wife, Alina, had passed away 6 months ago from a sudden illness. She had been his anchor, his partner in everything from building their tech empire to raising their only child. Without her, the world felt colder, louder, and far too big. Beside him, holding his hand tightly, was his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She wore a simple navy blue dress, nothing flashy, nothing expensive looking, but her eyes were wide with wonder and worry. She wasn't used to places like this. At home, she liked quiet corners, her sketchbook, and the soft blanket her mom used to tuck around her at bedtime. Here, everything felt too bright, too loud, too fast. The music wasn't soothing, it was overwhelming. The people weren't friendly. They were strangers with sharp eyes and practiced smiles. And the dancing? That was the worst part. Earlier, the event's host had announced that after dinner, the children of the guests would be invited to join a short dance in the center of the ballroom, a sweet moment of joy, he'd called it. Lily had gone pale the moment she heard those words. Dancing in front of strangers? In front of cameras? She couldn't imagine anything more terrifying. She'd whispered to her dad, "Can we go home, please?" But Daniel had gently squeezed her hand and said, "Just for a little while longer, sweetheart." For Mom, because Elena had loved events like this, she'd always believed in giving back, in showing up, and being part of something bigger. And Daniel wanted Lily to remember that part of her now, as the music shifted to something lighter and more playful. The host called out, "All the wonderful kids here tonight, come on down. Let's see those smiles." A few children, dressed in fancy outfits and clearly used to the spotlight, ran forward eagerly. They twirled and laughed, enjoying the attention. But Lily stayed rooted to the spot, her fingers digging into her father's palm. Her breath came faster. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. She wanted to disappear. Daniel looked down at her. He saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear he'd seen every night since Alina died. When Lily would wake up crying, calling for her mom, he'd hired the best child therapists. He'd taken her on luxury trips to Paris, Bali, even a private island. He'd bought her every toy, every book, every comfort money could buy. But nothing had reached her like her mother's voice, her mother's arms. And now, standing in this dazzling room full of strangers, Lily looked more alone than ever. He crouched down to her level, blocking out the noise as best he could. "You don't have to dance, Lily," he said softly. "No one's making you," she nodded quickly, relief washing over her face until the host added with a cheerful laugh, "Oh, come on. Don't be shy. Everyone's watching." That did it. Lily's lower lip trembled. She turned away, pressing her face into her father's coat, trying to hide. Her small body shook with silent panic. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, his heart breaking all over again. He could buy companies, influence governments, command boardrooms, but he couldn't give his daughter the one thing she needed right now, the courage to feel safe. Across the room, near the dessert table, a young woman paused in the middle of refilling champagne flutes. Her name was Maria, and she was 23, with tired eyes and a gentle smile. She wasn't a guest, she was staff, one of dozens hired for the night to serve canapes and pour drinks. She wore a black uniform that was slightly too big, and her shoes pinched her feet after hours of standing. She was working this event to earn extra money for nursing school, dreaming of a day when she could help people heal the way the nurses had helped her little brother during his long hospital stay last year. Maria had noticed Lily the moment the girl walked in. There was something about the way she clung to her father, the way she looked at the world like it might hurt her if she wasn't careful. Maria knew that look. She'd worn it herself as a child, growing up in a crowded apartment with a single mom who worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. She remembered how scary big places felt, how loud voices could feel like shouting, how smiling strangers could feel like traps. Now, as she watched Lily shrink into herself, tears welling in her eyes, Maria felt a pull in her chest. She didn't know who the man was, though she'd heard whispers that Daniel Reeves was somewhere in the room, but she didn't care about his name or his money. All she saw was a little girl who needed kindness. Without thinking twice, Maria set down her tray. She walked slowly, calmly, not wanting to startle the child. She stopped a few feet away and knelt down so she wasn't towering over Lily. She didn't say anything at first, just waited. Then, in the softest voice, she asked, "Hey, do you want a hug?" Lily looked up, surprised. No one had asked her that in a long time. Not really. She hesitated, glancing at her dad. He gave a small, encouraging nod. And then, almost shyly, Lily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Maria's neck. Maria held her gently. Not too tight, not too loose, just right. She didn't say it's okay or don't cry. She just held her, letting the hug speak for itself. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by noise and glitter and power, something shifted. Lily's breathing slowed. Her shoulders relaxed. For the first time all night, she didn't feel like she was drowning, and that was just the beginning. Maria didn't let go right away. She stayed kneeling on the cool marble floor, one arm around Lily's small back, the other gently stroking her hair. The music played on light, cheerful, full of strings and piano butt around them. The world seemed to slow down. People kept talking, laughing, clinking glasses, but none of it touched the quiet bubble they'd created. Lily buried her face in Maria's shoulder, breathing in the faint scent of vanilla hand soap and something warm like home. It wasn't perfume or expensive fabric, it was just clean, simple, real. After a few long seconds, Maria pulled back just enough to look into Lily's eyes. She didn't smile too big or talk too fast. She just whispered, "You don't have to dance if you don't want to. But if you ever do, you don't have to do it alone." Then, still holding Lily's hands, she stood up slowly and swayed just a little to the music barely moving. Just a gentle rock from side to side. "Like this," she said softly. "No one's watching. It's just us." Lily blinked. No one's watching? That didn't feel true. There were hundreds of people in the room. Cameras, famous names, billionaires. But when she looked around, something strange happened. No one was staring. Some guests had turned away. Others were deep in conversation. The spotlight that had felt so heavy just moments ago had lifted. And Maria? She wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking only at Lily, her eyes calm and kind. She had all the time in the world. So Lily took a breath and swayed too. At first it was barely a movement. Just a tiny shift of weight from one foot to the other. But Maria matched her, humming along with the melody under her breath. Her voice soft and steady. Step, sway, breathe. Step again. No fancy spins. No performance. Just 2 people moving together in a room full of noise. Finding a quiet rhythm only they could hear, a small smile tugged at Lily's lips. It wasn't the practiced, polite smile she'd been taught to wear at events like this. This one was real soft, surprised, like she'd just discovered a secret. And when Maria smiled back, not with pity or performance, but with genuine warmth, Lily's shoulders dropped all the way. The knot in her chest, the one that had been there since her mom got sick, loosened just a little. From across the ballroom, Daniel watched. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He just stood there, frozen in place, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. He'd expected to see his daughter retreat, maybe cry, maybe beg to leave. He'd braced himself for another moment of helplessness. Instead, he saw something he hadn't seen since Alina died, his daughter's eyes lighting up. Not with excitement, not with forced cheer, but with trust. He didn't know who this young woman was. She wore a staff badge, a simple black uniform, no jewelry, no designer shoes. She looked tired, like she'd already worked a long day before this. But in that moment, she had something no amount of money could buy: the ability to make his child feel safe. Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of all the things he'd tried: the private grief counselor who spoke in clinical terms, the luxury retreat in Switzerland where Lily refused to leave her room, the robot dog he'd imported from Japan that could mimic emotions. Lily had named it Fake and left it in the closet. He'd thrown money at the problem like it was a wall he could break through with enough force. But healing didn't work that way. And this stranger, this waitress, had done in 2 minutes what he couldn't do in 6 months. Maria didn't stop there. As the song neared its end, she bent down again and whispered something in Lily's ear. Lily giggled, actually giggled, and nodded. Then Maria reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small paper napkin. With a borrowed pen, she drew a tiny heart on it and handed it to Lily. "For your pocket," she said. "So you remember you're brave." Lily clutched the napkin like it was gold. The music faded. The other children ran back to their parents, flushed and laughing. But Lily stayed with Maria, her small hand still in the young woman's. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked. Seen. Daniel finally moved. He walked over slowly, not wanting to interrupt, but needing to say something, anything. When Maria noticed him approaching, she stood up straight, suddenly aware of who he might be. Her eyes flickered with nervousness. She smoothed her uniform, as if trying to make herself smaller. "Thank you," Daniel said, his voice rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. I don't even know your name, Maria," she said quietly. I work here tonight." "You're more than that," he said, and meant it. "You have no idea what you just did for her." Maria glanced at Lily, who was now tracing the heart on the napkin with her finger. "She just needed someone to be with her," Maria said simply. "Not to fix her. Just be there." Those words hit Daniel like a punch to the chest, because that was exactly what Alina would have said. His wife had never tried to fix Lily's shyness or fear. She'd just sat with her, read with her, held her, loved her through it. He opened his mouth to say more, to offer a tip, a job, something, but Maria gently shook her head. "I should get back," she said, nodding toward the dessert table. "They'll miss me." Before she turned away, Lily looked up and said, "Will I see you again?" Maria paused. She didn't promise what she couldn't keep, but she smiled and said, "If the world's kind, maybe." And with that, she walked back into the crowd, disappearing among the servers and silver trays, as if she'd never been anything more than a passing moment. But Daniel knew better. That moment had changed everything. He took Lily's hand again, and this time she didn't cling. She held on with quiet confidence. As they walked toward the exit, not because they were running away, but because they'd found what they came for, Daniel looked down at his daughter and saw something new in her eyes, a flicker of hope, and for the first time since Alina left them, he felt it too. The drive home was quiet, but not the heavy kind of quiet that had filled their house for months. This silence felt different, softer, like the air after a summer rain. Lily sat in the back seat, still holding the crumpled napkin with the little heart drawn on it. She didn't speak, but every now and then, Daniel saw her smile to herself in the rearview mirror. It wasn't a big smile, just a small, private one. It's like she was remembering something warm. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was racing. He couldn't stop seeing it, the way Maria had knelt down without hesitation, the way she'd hummed instead of lectured, the way she'd made space for Lily's fear instead of trying to push it away. He'd spent so long believing that love meant fixing, solving, providing. But Maria hadn't offered solutions. She'd offered presence, and that had been enough. When they got home, Lily didn't run straight to her room like she usually did. Instead, she walked to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water. and sat at the island counter at the same spot where she and her mom used to bake cookies on Sunday mornings. Daniel watched from the doorway, unsure whether to speak or just let the moment breathe. "Dad?" Lily finally said, her voice small but clear. "Yes, sweetheart." "Do you think Mom would have liked her?" The question hit him like a wave. He swallowed hard. "Yes," he said, his voice thick. "I think she would have loved her." Lily nodded, satisfied, and went back to tracing the heart on the napkin with her fingertip. In that instant, Daniel realized something painful and beautiful. His daughter was starting to heal, not because the pain was gone, but because someone had shown her she didn't have to carry it alone. That night, long after Lily was asleep, Daniel sat in his study with a laptop open, not working on company reports or investment strategies, but searching. He typed in the name of the catering company that had staffed the gala. It took a few calls, a few polite but firm requests. But by dawn, he had Maria's full name, her school, even her part-time schedule. He didn't do it to intrude. He did it because he needed to understand who she was, not just the woman in the black uniform, but the person behind the kindness. He learned she was studying to be a nurse at a community college, working nights to pay for textbooks and bus fare. She lived in a small apartment in Queens with her younger brother, who had recovered from a serious illness thanks to the care of nurses, who treated him like family. She volunteered at a children's hospital on weekends. She'd never been on a plane. She wanted to open a free clinic one day in her neighborhood. Reading those details, Daniel felt a strange mix of shame and awe. He owned private jets, penthouses in 3 cities, and a company valued at over $20 billion, yet this young woman with calloused hands and tired eyes had something he'd lost: the ability to give without expecting anything back. The next morning, he didn't call his assistant to arrange a donation or send a gift basket. He dressed simply: jeans, a plain sweater. No watch hand drove himself to the diner where Maria worked weekend mornings before her nursing classes. He arrived just after sunrise, the streets still quiet, the air crisp with autumn. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee, toast, and bacon. Maria was behind the counter, her hair pulled back, pouring coffee for an elderly man who called her honey. Like she was his granddaughter, Daniel sat at a booth near the window. He didn't wave or call out. He just waited. When Maria finished her round, she noticed him. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't look away. She walked over, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mr. Reeves," she said carefully. "I didn't expect to see you here, Daniel," he corrected gently. "And I couldn't stop thinking about what you did for Lily." Maria glanced toward the kitchen, as if checking if her manager was watching. "I just gave her a hug," she said, almost embarrassed. "It wasn't anything special." "But it was," he said, leaning forward. "To her, it was everything. To me, it was a reminder I didn't know I needed." She studied him for a long moment, her expression softening. "You miss her," she said quietly. Not a question. A statement. He nodded, unable to speak for a second. "Every second," he admitted. "And I've been trying so hard to protect Lily from the pain. But maybe I've been protecting her from healing too." Maria didn't offer empty comfort. She just said grief doesn't need fixing. It needs company. Those words settled in his chest like truth. He didn't ask her for anything that day. No favors, no promises. He just thanked her again, left a generous tip for the whole staff, and walked out. But as he drove away, he knew he couldn't let this end here. Not because he owed her money, though he would find a way to help, but because something rare had happened that night at the gala. A thread of connection had been woven between 3 lives: a grieving father, a frightened child, and a young woman who chose kindness when no one was watching. Later that week, Daniel met with his personal lawyer not to draft a contract, but to design something new. He wanted to create a scholarship fund in Elena's name, not for Ivy League students or tech prodigies, but for people like Maria, caregivers, nurses, social workers, those who heal with their hands and hearts, not their bank accounts. And he wanted Maria to be the first recipient. Full tuition, books, living expenses. No strings. But more than that, he wanted to ask her something personal. Something that had nothing to do with money. He invited her to his home, not the penthouse, but the quieter house upstate where Alina had planted a garden and Lily had learned to ride a bike. When Maria arrived, nervous but curious, Daniel didn't sit behind a desk or offer champagne. He made tea, just like Alina used to, and sat with her at the kitchen table. "Lily asks about you," he said after a while. "Not every day. But sometimes, when she's drawing or when it rains, she says, 'I wonder if Maria likes thunderstorms too.'" Maria's eyes glistened. "I do," she whispered. He took a breath. "I'm not asking you to be her nanny or her tutor. I'm not offering you a job." He paused. "I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to stay in her life. As a friend, as someone she can look up to. You don't have to say yes. And if you ever feel it's too much, you can walk away. No questions." Maria was silent for a long time. Then she looked toward the backyard, where Lily was sitting under a tree, sketching in her notebook. "She's got your eyes," Maria said softly. "But your wife's smile." Daniel nodded, tears finally spilling over. "She does." "I'll stay," Maria said. "Not for you. Because she deserves to know that the world has good people in it heaven when it feels dark." In that moment, Daniel didn't feel like a billionaire. He didn't feel powerful or in control. He just felt human, grateful, humbled, and finally, after so long, hopeful. And for the first time since Alina left, he didn't feel alone in raising his daughter. Because someone had shown up not with a grand gesture, but with a hug and changed everything. Life didn't change overnight, but it began to shift slowly, gently, like the first light of dawn spreading across a dark sky. After that quiet conversation in the kitchen, Maria didn't suddenly become a permanent guest in their home. She didn't move in or take over. Instead, she showed up the way real friends do, steadily, without fanfare. Sometimes it was a Saturday morning when she'd stop by after her nursing class with a paper bag of warm croissants and sit with Lily at the kitchen table while they drew pictures together. Other times it was a quick text to Daniel. "Saw this book at the library, thought Lily might like it." And she'd leave it on the porch with a sticky note that just said, "For brave hearts." Lily started waiting for those visits. Not with anxiety, but with quiet anticipation. She'd leave her sketchbook open on the couch to a drawing she wanted to show Maria. Or save a funny story from school, just to tell her. One rainy afternoon, when thunder cracked loudly and Lily flinched, Maria didn't say, "Don't be scared." She just sat beside her on the floor, pulled out her phone and played the same soft song from the gala, the one she'd hummed that night. And together, they swayed gently in the living room. No audience, no expectations, just two people finding comfort in rhythm and presence. Daniel watched. These moments unfold like pages of a story he hadn't known how to write. He still worked long hours, still ran board meetings and signed deals, but something inside him had softened. He stopped trying to fix Lily's sadness and started simply being with her in it. He'd sit beside her on the porch swing and say, "I miss Mom today too," and for the first time. Lily didn't shut down, she leaned into him. And sometimes Maria would join them, bringing hot chocolate in mismatched mugs. And the three of them would watch the stars come out, talking about nothing and everything. Meanwhile, Daniel quietly set his plan in motion. He didn't announce it with press releases or gala speeches. He worked with his lawyer to create the Alina Reeves Caregiver Scholarship Fund that would cover full tuition, books, housing, and even a small living stipend for students pursuing careers in nursing, social work, or child therapy. The only requirement? They had to demonstrate kindness, not just grades. The first recipient, of course, was Maria. When the acceptance letter arrived in her mailbox-thick envelope, official seal, full scholarship, she cried in the hallway of her apartment building. Clutching it to her chest like a lifeline, she called Daniel that evening, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "I know," he replied. "But Alina would have wanted to. And I want to." What he didn't tell her then but would later was that funding her education wasn't just about gratitude. It was about belief. He believed in her dream of opening a free clinic in her neighborhood. He believed in the kind of healing that happens not in sterile offices, But in quiet moments, a hand on a shoulder, a shared song, a napkin with a heart, and he wanted to help build a world where people like Maria could thrive. As months passed, Maria's life began to open up in ways she'd only dreamed of. She no longer had to choose between buying groceries and paying for lab fees. She could focus on her studies, volunteer more at the children's hospital, and even start saving for her brother's college fund. But through it all, she never let the scholarship poor Daniel's generosity change how she treated Lily. She never acted like she owed them anything. She just kept showing up, the same warm, grounded person she'd always been, and Lily bloomed because of it. She started speaking up in class. She joined the school art club. On her 9th birthday, instead of hiding in her room like the year before, she invited 2 friends over and asked if Maria could come too. When the girls played music and danced in the backyard, Lily didn't freeze. She laughed, twirled, and even taught them the little sway step Maria had shown her that night at the gala. Daniel watched from the kitchen window, his heart so full it ached. One evening, as Maria helped Lily hang her latest drawings on the fridge, colorful sketches of trees, cats, and a woman with kind eyes holding a little girl's hand, Lily turned and asked, "Are you my friend, Maria?" Maria knelt down, just like she had that first night. "Always," she said, "even when I'm scared. Especially then." That simple exchange meant more to Daniel than any business deal he'd ever closed. He began to see the world differently, too. At work, he started asking his team not just what's the profit margin, but who does this help? He redirected part of his company's charitable giving toward community health programs and mental health support for children. He even sat in on a few of Maria's nursing lectures, not to impress anyone, but because he wanted to understand the world she was stepping into. He learned about trauma-informed care, about how a single moment of compassion can reroute a child's entire life. And he realized that's exactly what Maria had done for Lily. Years didn't erase the grief of losing Alina, but they layered it with new memories, real, warm, living ones. Lily kept the napkin with the heart in a small box on her nightstand, next to a photo of her mom. But now, there was also a photo of her and Maria at the county fair, cotton candy in hand, both laughing with sugar on their cheeks. And Daniel, he still missed his wife every day, but he no longer felt like he was failing her by not being able to fix their daughter's pain. Because healing wasn't about fixing. It was about connection. And thanks to a young waitress who chose to kneel down instead of walk by, his family had found a new kind of wholeness. Not complete, but deeply, beautifully human. The money had opened doors, yes. But it was the kindness, the quiet, unmeasured, everyday kindness that had rebuilt their home. The school auditorium buzzed with the low hum of parents shuffling into seats, teachers adjusting microphones, and students whispering backstage. It was the annual Voices of Tomorrow event at Oak Ridge Middle School, where 8th graders shared personal reflections on a lesson that changed their lives. Backstage, Lily Reeves smoothed the front of her simple blue dress, the same shade as the one she'd worn that night at the gala, though she didn't plan it that way. She wasn't nervous, not like she used to be. Her hands were steady, her breath even. In her pocket, she still carried the old napkin with the heart drawn on it, now soft from years of folding and unfolding. Out in the audience, Daniel sat near the center aisle. He wasn't surrounded by bodyguards or assistants. He just looked like any other parent, proud, a little emotional, eyes fixed on the stage. Beside him, Maria sat quietly, wearing a modest sweater and a smile that said she already knew what Lily was about to say. She'd been there for every school play, every art show, every tough day and small victory. She wasn't family by blood, but by choice, in that, Lily always said, meant even more. When Lily's name was called, she walked on stage with calm confidence. No rushing, no fidgeting. She took the microphone, looked out at the crowd not with fear, but with warmth, and began to speak. She didn't start with a grand statement. She started with a memory. "When I was 8, she said, her voice clear and steady, "I thought kindness had a price tag. I thought it came in fancy packages, with ribbons and receipts, because that's what I saw around me, people giving money. Buying things, trying to fix everything with stuff." She paused, glancing at her dad, then at Maria. But one night, at a big party full of important people, I learned something different. She told the story simply how she'd been too scared to dance, how the noise and lights made her feel like she was disappearing, how she just wanted her mom, who wasn't there anymore. And then, she said, a waitress saw me. She didn't know my name. She didn't know my dad was rich. She just saw a kid who needed a hug. So she gave me one. And then she danced with me right there, in the middle of all those strangers. Not to show off. Not to get anything. Just because I needed someone to be with me. A few parents wiped their eyes. A teacher nodded slowly. Lily went on. That hug didn't cost anything, but it gave me everything. It gave me back my voice. It taught me that real kindness isn't about how much you give, it's about how you see someone. Like they matter. Like they're enough. Just as they are. She didn't mention the scholarship, the foundation, or the years that followed. She didn't need to. The power of her story was in its simplicity, in the truth that one small act, done with no expectation, can echo for a lifetime. When she finished, the room was silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. Not polite clapping, but real, heartfelt cheers. Kids who'd never spoken to her before came up afterward to say, "That was amazing," or "My mom cried." One shy boy even whispered, "I get scared too. Thanks for saying it's okay." Later, as they walked to the car, Daniel put his arm around Lily's shoulders. "You made your mom proud today," he said softly. Lily smiled. "And Maria." "And Maria," he agreed. Maria hung back a little, not wanting to intrude on their moment. But Lily turned and grabbed her hand. "You're coming with us," she said firmly. "We're getting ice cream. My treat." Maria laughed. "Since when do you have money?" "I traded 3 stickers and a pencil with Jake," Lily said proudly. "He said it was worth 2 scoops. That night, the 3 of them sat on the porch with cones and hand chocolate for Lily, mint chip for Maria, plain vanilla for Daniel, like Elena used to eat. The sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in gold and pink. Crickets began their evening song. It was an ordinary moment, the kind that rarely makes headlines or fills photo albums. But it was full of everything that mattered. Daniel looked at the 2 of them, Lily, now tall and thoughtful, with her mother's eyes and her own quiet strength. Maria, no longer a struggling student, but a newly licensed nurse, already volunteering at a community health fair on weekends, and felt a deep, quiet peace. He still ran a global company. His name still appeared on lists of the world's wealthiest people. But none of that defined him anymore. What defined him was this: showing up, staying present, learning finally that love isn't measured in assets, but in attention. The foundation in Elaine's name had grown. Dozens of students had received scholarships. A small clinic had opened in Maria's old neighborhood, offering free care to families who couldn't afford it. But the real legacy wasn't in buildings or bank accounts. It was in moments like this, when a girl who once couldn't dance now stood on stages and spoke with courage. When a young woman who once served canops now healed wounds with steady hands. And when a father who once thought money could solve everything learned to simply sit in the quiet, be grateful. Years later, when Lily applied to college, she didn't choose the most prestigious school. She chose one with a strong program in child psychology and community outreach. In her application essay, she wrote, "I want to be the person who kneels down. Not because I have to, but because I remember what it felt like when someone did it for me." And Daniel. He never forgot that night at the gala, not the chandeliers or the cameras, but the quiet space between 2 hearts that found each other in the noise. He kept a framed photo on his desk, not of a business deal or a red carpet moment, but of Lily and Maria, years later, laughing in the backyard. Sunlight catching the edges of their smiles, the world kept spinning. Fortunes rose and fell. Trends came and went. But some truths remained, that kindness needs no audience, that healing begins with being seen, and that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is offer a hug and stay long enough to mean it.